Hey, I'm Jack Kodiga. I'm a Christian, live in North Carolina, and work in finance. Welcome to my channel, Freedom in Government, where we explore what a free society looks like, the principles that guide us, and how we apply them to today's issues. In this video, I'll explain why America is not a free country. I'll break down key topics to show you how we're unfree when it needs to change. To do this, I'll use the Communist Manifesto as a benchmark. While communism isn't the main threat today, Marx's blueprint offers a clear look at how totalitarianism takes shape, which is still relevant as the struggle for power always continues. Before we dive into the details of why America's unfree, let's briefly contrast a free society with a totalitarian one. Marx highlights that communism abolishes eternal truths, abolishes all religion, all morality. Just like how communism demands a break from the past, claiming the power to reshape reality, so do all forms of totalitarianism, whether fascism, democratic socialism, or technocracy. This is why totalitarianism always fails. It undermines human dignity and the natural rights we're born with. In a free society, we recognize that our rights come from something greater than government, something eternal. This is reflected in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. The Ninth Amendment makes clear that the rights listed aren't the only ones we have. Our government's role is to uphold these timeless principles that our rights come from God. This is why our country is so great. Totalitarian regimes fail because they believe they can define rights. Marx argued that in a fully realized communist society, class distinctions would disappear and power would dissolve. But we should know better that the fight for power never ends and that hierarchies are natural. There's a reason why communism always ends with the powerful in control and the people at their mercy. And I don't know about you, but I prefer a society that upholds the biblical truth of inherent human dignity, not one where power decides what's right or wrong. While communism is an extreme example of totalitarianism, we still face threats from systems seeking total control. That's why it's crucial to understand how they operate. Achieving a truly free society is about balancing freedom with structure. It's tough, but the best approach is minimal government intervention while ensuring essential systems run effectively. The preamble to the Constitution lays out the core functions of our government. To form a more perfect union, we must establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty. Balancing these goals with protecting individual autonomy and natural rights is no easy task, but it's a balance we've agreed to as Americans. And in my view, we've failed to strike that balance. So let's explore why I don't see America as a free country and what we can do to fix it. To do that, we'll compare our system to Marx's 10 points for creating a communist society. Here they are. The first three focus on taxes. No private property, heavy income tax, any total inheritance tax. Then comes property confiscation from those who oppose the regime. His fifth point is that there needs to be a central bank. Sixth point, the centralization of communication and transport. Seventh, state control over industries and land for collective ownership and economic planning. The eighth is everyone must work with large state-organized groups, ensuring collective productivity. 9 is to combine farming with manufacturing, gradually reducing the gap between urban and rural areas by spreading people across the countryside. Marx's final point, his 10th point to how to turn advanced countries communist, is that the state must provide free public education for all children, abolish child labor in factories, and combine education with industrial work, and so on. There you go, that's his 10, and I'll go over each of these points, explain why Marx thought they were necessary for his communist utopia, give a progress report for the US, and wrap up with what it will take for America to be truly free. Does it sound good? Hope so, because we're going. To make America unfree, the first measure on Karl Marx's wish list is the abolition of property in land and the application of all rents to public purposes. This essentially means no private property, and any wealth tied to land would be redirected for the public good. The issue with this is that private property rights are foundational to freedom. They allow people to live their lives according to their own values and provide the incentive for individuals to invest in and improve what they own. In terms of the United States, our property rights are generally considered strong, and that's a big reason why foreign investors are confident in the US economy and investing here. However, freedom isn't relative. Just because we're freer than other countries doesn't mean we're truly free. Freedom is an objective standard, not a subjective one. Even though the US has strong property rights compared to other nations, there are still areas where we fall short. For example, all 50 states impose property taxes. Some states like Hawaii have lower rates, which is less than 0.5% of the home value, while others like New Jersey or Texas tax property at rates over 2%. I believe property taxes are inherently unfair. They undermine the very concept of ownership. If I buy something, I should own it outright. But with property taxes, if you don't pay, the state can seize it. That's not true ownership. The situation is getting worse. Wealth taxes are becoming a hot topic. While the US does not have a nationwide wealth tax yet, states like California are pushing for one. Starting January 1st, 2026, California plans to tax wealth exceeding $50 million at a rate of 1% annually, with an additional 0.5% tax on assets over $1 billion. Part-time residents will also be taxed on a pro-rata basis depending on how many days they spend in the state. That's not freedom. The U.S. may justify property taxes by claiming they support public services, but the reality is that they directly violate the fundamental right to own property. While the state may technically protect property rights, property taxes, with the looming threat of wealth taxes, reveal that America is straying from the principles of true freedom. My grade for our country on this issue is a C-. So that's the first point. Now we're going to go on to the second point. To make America unfree, the second measure on Karl Marx's wish list is a heavy progressive income tax. The issue with this is that progressive taxes disincentivize productivity. Also, the more you tax, the more the government has to create loopholes and tax-saving schemes which increase government control. Then the tax code becomes a maze that benefits those who can navigate it and allows the state to incentivize certain behaviors from corporations from people. Does this sound familiar? Does this sound like the US? Probably a little bit. But this is what you also see in fascism, where private businesses are allowed to pursue profit, but they must serve the regime's interests in return. Taxes are a tough issue because they highlight the balancing act of living in a free society. Taxes are necessary, but they can also be invasive, and we have to watch out for that. The income tax, in particular, is problematic. It has legitimized the IRS, which often operates like an extortion machine, with so many rules that even small mistakes can lead to penalties. When it comes to income tax, the US earns a D-. The income tax became official with the 16th Amendment in 1913, the same year the Federal Reserve was created. Not a great year for freedom. Back then, rates were much lower. Just 1% on income over $3,000 for single filers, rising to 7% on income over $500,000. Corporate tax started at 1% on income over $5,000. However, because the Federal Reserve has devalued their dollar so much, $3,000 in 1913 would be equivalent to around $90,000 today. And that's based on government statistics, which I don't fully trust, but let's just go with that number as it still backs my point up. This means the original tax burden on the upper middle class was much smaller than what we see today. Today, federal income tax brackets range from 10% to 37% depending on income. Now let's move on. To make America unfree, the third measure on Karl Marx's wish list is the abolition of all rights of inheritance. The problem with this is that it gives the state even more power. People can't pass on wealth to their families. They lose the ability to create lasting legacies, and wealth inequality becomes even more entrenched. The real issue is often misunderstood. Our issues here are systemic, and it's about currency manipulation at the forefront. We need to have a currency that can't be arbitrarily manipulated, and I'll cover that more in the currency section later. That's point 5. The solution isn't a bigger state or more welfare. That's just naive. When people don't understand this, they blame the wrong things. We've talked about property tax, income tax, inheritance tax. These are things Marx wanted because they strip agency from people and give it to the state. For our country, I give us a C on the inheritance tax issue. An inheritance tax is driven by politics of jealousy or ignorance. The idea of equal opportunities doesn't work when you sacrifice freedom. The tax rate in our country starts at 18% and goes up to 40% on amounts over the exemption threshold of $12 million for individual and $24 million for couples. Personally, I think it should be 0. It's absurd. The best wealth-creating system so far has been free market capitalism. It aligns public benefits with individual interests, fosters wealth creation, and preserves freedom. In that system, people don't get rich off ripping others off. They do so by providing value. Taking from the rich and redistributing it doesn't work. It only makes everyone poorer in the long run. Now let's dive back in, starting with Marx's fourth measure, confiscating property from all rebels. This issue here is simple. If you disagree, they take your stuff. There's no tolerance for opposing views, but let's make something clear. Tolerance doesn't mean agreeing with everything. True tolerance acknowledges that every person has inherent value, but there are right and wrong ways to live. And some things, like injustice or harm, must be punished by society. Society just can't bear some things. So where are we now? We're doing okay. I give us a C. We're not outright confiscating property, but the state still finds subtle ways to seize wealth. Taxation and inflation are slow, steady methods of taking. Our country has a history of weaponizing the judicial system, which essentially serves as a form of property confiscation. Consider Alex Jones, fined $1.5 billion for his comments about Sandy Hook. Whether you agree with him or not, it's clear this fine was aimed at silencing him. $1.5 billion is a lot. Or look at the selective justice we saw with Trump. Regardless of your feelings towards him, we can't tolerate a system where the law is applied unevenly. We need equal justice under the law. That's the fourth point there. Now we're going on to our fifth. And to make America unfree, this fifth measure on Karl Marx's wish list is the centralization of credit in the hands of the state through a national bank with state capital and exclusive monopoly. The issue with this is pretty clear. It's striking that Marx saw a central bank as a fundamental pillar of a communist society. Yet we've had one in the US for over 100 years. This is a major reason why I argue that America has failed in its mission to be a truly free nation. We've allowed this system to exist and continue to do so. So let's do our check-in here. We're failing massively here. I give it an F-. This is terrible. This is awful. The Federal Reserve that was established in 1913 is at the heart of this. Talked about this in more detail in a separate video, but here's a short version. Those that control the money control everything. The Federal Reserve is the owner of the US dollar. And since so much of the world relies on the Federal Reserve and these Federal Reserve notes, that's what a US dollar is, those who control the Fed have immense power. For you, this means they control the value of your savings or the weight of your debt. In other words, they control the value of your labor. For us, they have the power to pick the winners in the economy. For the world, this means they can destabilize entire nations. Economic freedom is essential for true freedom. To have true freedom, we need money that isn't arbitrarily controlled. This might be Marx's fifth point, but it is the most damaging, and it's the one the US has completely failed on. This is why I can say unequivocally that the United States of America is not a free country. We need major reform here, so if you want more of my thoughts here, check out that video. Now on to the sixth measure. To make America unfree, the sixth measure on Karl Marx's wish list is the centralization of communication and transport in the hands of the state. The issue with freedom here is simple. If the state controls who you can talk to and where you can go, you're not free. Today, we're not at the point of full-on censorship, but there is still significant manipulation happening behind the scenes. Powerful people influence what we think and believe, shaping the narrative in ways that limit our freedom. This is why the First Amendment, which protects freedom of speech, was and is so critical. In America, our battles should be fought with words, not force. When we do a pulse check on our country, I give our communication grade a D. The First Amendment does so much for us. Freedom of speech is so deeply revered in America that it's tough to outright ban it. But take a look at countries like England, Canada, or Australia, where you can be fined and jailed for what you say.
Don't think that living in America makes you immune to this.
Yes, words matter, but in a free society, the bar for punishment should be incredibly high. In terms of communication, we need stronger protections for tech and social media platforms. It's essential to preserve the spirit of the First and Fourth Amendments, even though these are private businesses, to become the public square. The first guarantees free speech, while the fourth protects us from unreasonable searches. Yet today, we're seeing these rights violated in the digital age. Tech companies aren't transparent about how social media feeds are manipulated, and surveillance capitalism has become the norm. The collaboration between agencies and media outlets is deeply troubling. It feels like Operation Mockingbird, the CIA's operation to control media during the Cold War, never really ended. It's likely that looks different today, but the manipulation is still clearly there. On a positive note, Elon Musk buying Twitter was a big win for free speech, and he is a good transition to talk about transportation, which is another area where freedom is at risk. If you can't move freely, you're not free. The future of transit is concerning, especially the push for autonomous cars. I don't like the idea of giving up the control over my car, but the bigger issue here is environmentalism and the push to get off fossil fuels as soon as possible. I'm not a fan of heavy-handed government mandates like California's push for all new cars be zero emissions by 2035. I believe people will innovate if there's demand, and technology will improve on its own. But I also understand that the government has a role in ensuring the general welfare. So maybe bold action is needed. The problem is, though, many pushing the environmental agenda don't seem to prioritize freedom or the principle of using the minimum necessary force. They say the science is settled and take actions that could lower people's standard of living, all while ignoring the very real consequences for personal freedom. Yes, the environment matters, but so does freedom. In fact, a government that protects the rights and value of all people should be at the top of their priority list. These issues are all interconnected, and we cannot say environmentalism is more important than natural rights and taking care of people. I am genuinely concerned about the future of transportation and how it might affect our freedoms, but I feel pretty good about where we're at generally speaking, so I gave it a B. To make America unfree, the seventh measure on Karl Marx's wish list is extension of factories and instruments of production and by the state, along with cultivation of wastelands and the systematic improvement of the soil according to a common plan. That is a mouthful. I almost tripped up there. What this means is that the government would take over and manage factories, centralizing control of production. They would also bring unused land into cultivation to increase productivity, enhance soil quality, and agricultural output according to a unified plan. No great for us here, as owning the means of production doesn't apply to us. Next, let's look at Marx's eighth wish on his list: the equal liability of all to labor and the establishment of industrial armies, particularly for agriculture. In a communist system, everyone would be required to contribute equally to labor. There would be no distinction between individuals in terms of work. The issue here with freedom, it's straightforward. These ideas strip away individual choice and autonomy in the workforce. People will be forced into collective labor with no room for personal freedom or private enterprise. This is a clear example of communism undermining personal liberty. No grade for us here, as this is communist specific. Now let's move on to Marx's ninth measure: the combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries, the gradual abolition of the distinction between town and country, and an even distribution of population across the country. What stands out here is the homogenization of society. In this vision, there wouldn't be distinct cultures or subcultures. The plan is to integrate everyone together into one unified system, which can be seen in the push and mass migration today. We cannot take America's culture and values for granted. It's not guaranteed that we'll remain as we are. If we lose that core culture, we risk losing the freedoms that come with it.
I believe uniting against American values makes people accept life in a controlled ecosystem. And for that to happen, agriculture and manufacturing must merge. This is something Marx understood well. While industrial farming has boosted productivity, the way we've done it raises serious concerns. We have weak protections letting harmful chemicals into our food, overregulation of natural food, and subsidies that favor big corporations to independent farmers. Food is vital because it can either nourish or harm us, so we need a system that doesn't work against us. I'm optimistic with RFK Jr. now leading the HHS. Given his concerns, I give us a C- simply because he's in power. Food is deeply tied to freedom, as controlling the food supply is key to total control. Now that we're addressing this issue, it gives me hope for broader systemic change toward becoming a free society. I'm excited to see what comes next.
Now we're at our last point. To make America unfree, the 10th measure on Karl Marx's wish list is free public education for all children, the abolition of child labor in its current form, and the combination of education with industrial production. The public education system is where things get really problematic. Many criticize it for unfair funding, lack of choice, and poor quality. In states like California and North Carolina, schools are funded by property taxes, which mean wealthier areas get better schools while poor areas suffer. That's a major issue. But the bigger issue is the existence of property taxes themselves. If you buy something, you should own it outright. Why should I keep paying taxes on my property? And why should I be penalized for choosing not to send my kids to a government school? School choice in some states has been a step in the right direction, but it's not the full solution. We need to have a more fundamental discussion on about whether the state should even control education at all. The government's grip on education gives them the power to shape the minds of our youth. This is where the battle for freedom is truly fought, through ideas. If we want to preserve freedom, education must be controlled by the people, not the state. The grade I give our country here is a D. That's a wrap on how we stack up against Karl Marx's theory of the steps an advanced nation must take to become communist. The report card? Failing. Not good. Again, I'm not worried about communism itself, but I hope you can see why I believe we're not truly free. Look at these grades. All the grades are poor, but the central banking grade really brings us down. Whoever controls a country's money supply controls the country. That's well known and needs to be addressed. Hopefully Trump 2.0 will tackle the money problems along with many issues I've discussed today. But even if he doesn't, and even if he does, the fight for freedom never stops. We must always advocate for freedom if we want it. Living in a free society is challenging, and it's not easy for a country to become or stay free. It all comes down to personal responsibility. Fortunately, we live in a country founded on the principles of freedom. The goals set by our founders are something we can never let go of. Some of what I said we need to achieve may seem far-fetched in today's environment, but we're at a tipping point. People are starting to question institutions and principles like they've never challenged before, because those institutions are failing them and are collapsing overall. Given this shift, it's more important than ever to critically assess the direction we're headed. If we want to live in a truly free society, we need to take a hard look at where we're going and the changes that are necessary. Might take some time, but we can never let up. Thanks for watching. I hope this video helped clarify the state of America today and what a society that truly supports freedom looks like. Be sure to subscribe and check out my other videos for more insights into building a free society.